Pablo Escobar was one of history's most fearsome drug lords. When the law finally caught up to this legendary cartel leader, he was worth more than $30 billion. But how did this mysterious drug baron spend his billions? Today we're looking at a day in the life of Pablo Escobar. At the height of his power, Escobar was dealing with the day-to-day operations of the Medellin cartel, which controlled more than 80% of the world's cocaine traffic. Former associates report that Escobar was a workaholic. He woke early in the morning to deal with any potential threats to his business empire, including nosy politicians, potential extradition to the United States, and loss of inventory through drug busts. When he wasn't working, Pablo Escobar was a devoted family man. He married his wife, Maria Victoria Henao, when he was 26 and she was only 15. Henao's family did not approve of the marriage, and Escobar started a new independent life with his wife. The couple had two children, Juan Pablo and Manuela. Although Escobar was capable of extreme brutality, he was reportedly very sweet with his children. He tried to spend time with them and entertain them on his legendary Hacienda Nopales property. In fact, the house was designed for children to enjoy. When he had spare time, Escobar would walk around his massive compound with his kids, exploring the sculpture park and full zoo, which featured elephants, hippos, giraffes, and exotic birds. Although Escobar's children eventually turned against their notorious father, he made attempts to connect with them when they were young. He also lounged at his various properties scattered around the globe. Escobar owned a luxurious villa in Miami Beach. Many people believed it was bold to buy property in the US, and authorities eventually seized the house and all of its contents. When Escobar needed to get away for a few days, he would fly to a Caribbean paradise called Isla Grande. The property featured a mansion, apartments, courtyards, a large swimming pool, a helicopter landing pad, reinforced windows, and tiled floors. It was very rare for Escobar to take a holiday, but he would occasionally kick back on the beach in Isla Grande. The compound has since been demolished. In the early days of Escobar's drug career, he would personally fly drug shipments from Latin America to the United States. But as his wealth grew and the cartel's operations became more complicated, Escobar focused on big-picture decision-making. Before he was fictionalized in works like the Netflix series Narcos, Pablo was a working-class Colombian who was born in Rio Negro in 1949. Life was hard in nearby Medellin, where Escobar grew up, and his life of crime started young. Escobar's criminal career started as a teenager when he would steal gravestones and sell them to smugglers. Around the same time, Escobar started selling counterfeit high school and college diplomas to local students. In his 20s, the future drug dealer attempted to finish college, but he dropped out before obtaining a degree. After dropping out, Escobar met his future business partner, Oscar Benel Aguirre. They started running street scams around Medellin, including selling contraband cigarettes, fake lottery tickets, and stealing cars. Escobar's friends and family remember that he was obsessed with money and didn't care what he had to do to make it. Escobar promised himself that he would make 1 million Colombian pesos before he turned 22. He eventually made 100 million pesos, the equivalent of about $3 million by the time he was 26. Before he started working in the drug trade, Escobar was hired as a bodyguard and hitman. In the early 1970s, he made roughly $100,000 for kidnapping a prominent Colombian businessperson. But everything changed in 1975 when Pablo Escobar started working in the burgeoning cocaine trade. Of course, his biggest customers were in the United States, where consumers were rich and drug enforcement was ineffective. Escobar started frequent flights into the US via Colombia and Panama. Before long, he had a veritable army of planes at his disposal, including a Learjet, 6 helicopters, and 15 large airplanes. But in May 1976, Escobar was arrested leaving Ecuador with almost 40 pounds of cocaine. Escobar initially tried to bribe the Medellin judges who were handling his case, but when this failed, he simply ordered the murder of his arresting officers. This effectively scared the authorities and his case was dropped. The 1980s brought increased demand for cocaine from the United States and with it, massive profits for Escobar and his cartel. In order to establish more routes in South Florida, California, and Puerto Rico, Escobar purchased an island in the Bahamas called Norman's Cay, which included a 1-kilometer airstrip, a harbor, a hotel, houses, boats, and aircraft, and a refrigerated warehouse to store the cocaine. With his newfound riches, Escobar purchased an 8-square-mile plot of land in Colombia, where he set up his infamous Hacienda Nopales. The luxury house he created contained a zoo, a lake, a sculpture garden, a private bull ring, and other diversions for his family and the cartel. Despite his controversial actions, Escobar was generally popular with the Colombian public. He tried to capitalize on this popularity and ran for the Chamber of Representatives in 1982. After winning his seat, Colombian authorities began to grow weary of his increasing power. The United States issued a warrant for Escobar's arrest. Colombia's Supreme Court began studying the legality of extraditing Escobar to the US. Before they reached a verdict, Escobar took matters into his own hands and ordered a militarized invasion of the Supreme Court building. More than half of the justices were killed and the rest were taken hostage. All papers related to cocaine smugglers were burned, and the militants used the hostages as collateral to shut down all possibility of extradition. At the height of Escobar's power, the Medellin cartel brought in more than $70 million a day. This is equivalent to $150 million in 2021 money. This led to $26 billion in annual income, much of which was funneled directly into Pablo Escobar's pockets. To put this in perspective, the cartel smuggled 15 tons of cocaine into the United States every day and spent $1,000 a week just on rubber bands to wrap around their stacks of cash. And Escobar was an extremely public figure. Everyone seemed to know he was behind the biggest drug operation on Earth. In 1989, Forbes listed him as one of the 227 billionaires and attributed his riches to cocaine. Escobar used his money to fund his local football club, Atlético Nacional, which won the most prestigious Latin American Cup the same year. When asked how he got away with his illegal business, Escobar replied, "The business is simple. You bribe someone here, you bribe someone there, and you pay a friendly banker to help you bring the money back." Although he was public enemy number one in the United States, Escobar worked hard to establish a Robin Hood image in his native Colombia. In addition to funding local sports teams, he built affordable housing and sponsored civic activities. His popularity helped him to evade authorities, as locals would often serve as unofficial lookouts. Escobar offered financial rewards to anyone who killed police officers, leading to more than 600 murdered officers and making Colombia the murder capital of the world. Things reached a boiling point in 1989 when Escobar ordered the murder of Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara and presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. The incoming president, Cesar Gaviria, promised to curb violent crime and targeted Escobar specifically. Escobar recognized that he was in a difficult situation and negotiated a surrender to the authorities. In exchange, extradition to the United States was made illegal, and Escobar was allowed to kick back in his own luxurious private prison called La Catedral. Here, he had access to a soccer field, a bar, a jacuzzi, a waterfall, and unlimited visits from guests. Images of his palatial prison leaked to the media, and he was eventually ordered to enter a more conventional prison. However, Escobar escaped and was destined to spend the rest of his life running from the police. A strategic alliance was formed between the US government, Colombian government, right-wing militias, rival drug cartels, and a vigilante group called Las Pepes, which stands for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar. The manhunt resulted in more than 300 of Escobar's former partners, lawyers, family, and friends being murdered. Although Escobar once seemed unstoppable, he was eventually killed in a bloody shootout only 16 months after leaving La Catedral. His death caused great celebration around the world and mourning in his native Medellin. More than 25,000 people attended his funeral. After his death, Escobar's children, including Juan Pablo Escobar, became vocal critics of their father's violence. They believed that hard drugs should be legalized and regulated rather than continuing the failed war on drugs. Escobar's beloved Hacienda Nopales was surrendered to the government, and it now serves as a family theme park.